What's up, everybody? Kevin Allen here, and I'm just bringing you this new video to check out some of the latest upgrades and updates to the Domination station. In this one, we are looking at our new prioritize max lineups over max exposure setting. I'm going to explain what that is. You probably didn't even know what the issue was that it's correcting, or maybe you did. I don't know. Either way, I want to show you guys what the issue is that this is fixing, and it's a really awesome update. But let me start with the general update that we just did. We added server-side optimization to our MLB product. Very cool stuff. How does that work? Very simple. When you go to create your lineups, and I already made a video about making lineups yesterday and creating stacked lineups and all of that good stuff, so if you missed it, go check it out. But basically, when you're making your lineups and you are, all right, I'll show the actual example here real quick. So I'm making 30 lineups using browser side, which is our current system with 4 uniques. And we're going to set up some stacks here. 3 is a pretty common stack, and just leave it like that. I'm going to show you the issue currently and then what we have resolved. So let's set this at 99% because you need to make a couple of custom adjustments. This is FanDuel or DraftKings. This is DraftKings. So check it out. Browser side optimization. We're running lineups. 1, 2. Note the speed. Very slow. This was always an issue for us with our current browser-powered optimization method. It's just not super fast, right? And when we're talking making 150 lineups this way and it slows down the more lineups it makes, at some point it's just too freaking slow, right? Let's abort that. And we're going to show you a real quick just example of server-side optimization, which is much faster. We now have this on all of the MLB products. But again, I only really recommend using this for mass multi-entry. If you're just going to make 1, 2, 3 lineups, please continue to use browser-side optimization. Here you go. Look at the lineups being generated. Look at the speed. Massive difference. Boom. Lineups are done. And there you go. Major difference. I did a full video on this yesterday, but what I want to show, and actually the second component of this update is prioritize completing lineups above max exposure settings. How does this work? Check it out. I'm going to show this example on NASCAR because that, to me, is the sport where it's most obvious. And I'm going to show you an issue we have had and then the resolution. Okay? Now, this is a very sort of large version of this, but if I try to set every player to 40%, because I want sort of this spread of exposures out, and this is hit. People who play a lot and specifically play with tournament mode understand exactly what I'm talking about. At some point, you freeze up the tool because you've set settings that are too difficult for it to figure out using the math of our system. So I'm going to show you this one here. If I simply click optimize, what's going to happen? Only one team could be generated with these settings. Why? Because tournament mode with every player 40% has a rear-looking thing, and on lineup number 2, every player set under 50 would just break the math of how tournament mode works. Now, this is an extreme example, and what actually normally happens is we're making lineups, we're setting max exposures for every player, and at some point you hit a player, you set a max on him, and it just can't make any lineups anymore. So, again, currently, tournament mode, I click this, only one team can be generated. Set, prioritize, completing lineups. I'm actually going to make a lot of lineups because I want you guys to see exactly how this works. Check this out. Watch as it's making the lineups. Look at this. I set everybody to 40%. Now I'm getting a perfect spread of exposures across all of these guys. This is super important, particularly in NASCAR and PGA, which are 2 sports that are kind of set up this way, where there's very few players, or just very few players at certain salary ranges to create proper lineups. But check this out. Look at this beautiful even spread of exposures going from what is essentially the best projected player and points per dollar basis up here, down from there. Now, if I'm working my exposures and I see guys at no numbers, I don't want so much exposure to them, I can raise it, I can lower it. I no longer have to worry about breaking the math by setting max exposures under 50% for too many players at a particular position group or whatnot. So when we talk about a sport like MLB, that starts to happen when you're dealing with like all of your shortstops with a very low number, or all of your pitchers with like an under 50% number, where it's like it can't find anybody to use for lineup number 2. So there we go. This is my favorite part of this current update. You notice it went above here. I just want to show this again to show you why this works. Because the first lineup, it goes above 50%. That's what was breaking it. And I'm going to try to show this. Oh, wait, I can hit it from here. There we go. Watch when it makes the first lineup, 100%, 50%, 60, 40. So the issue before was when you had max exposure set to 40%, that first lineup, they're 100%, and that would break the math. So now this new setting corrects that issue. Eventually it's going to be default checked off, but at this moment you have to check it off. The reason I haven't default checked it off is because we want to continue to test it when it's checked off against all the other different types of optimizations, not using tournament mode, those kind of things. But in general, I'm going to recommend now always using tournament mode and always checking off that box for every sport. Tournament mode is very, very important. A lot of people don't know what tournament mode does, so I will explain that again. The reason tournament mode exists and what it does is it's a rear-looking equation that states basically if this player is in more than 40% of the previous lineups generated, he is no longer eligible to be used in the next lineup generated. And what it does is it spreads out exposures for the highest projected players across the entire set of lineups that you're creating, rather than what would happen in optimal mode. And I'm going to show you, actually, let's go back to 100% and let's change to optimal mode, because I just want to show you what the difference is, because a lot of people still don't understand what tournament mode is. And since I have you here captured, I'm going to now show you what it is. Okay, you ready? We're going to go to optimal mode, and I'm going to set everything, let's say everything at 60%. And the reason I'm going to do this is to show you an extreme example of what optimal mode is. Watch this. As the lineups are being generated, these two guys are 100%. Very close to it. Now, they basically showed up together, paired up, in the first 60% of lineups that were generated, because they were the two highest projected, or all three of these guys were the highest projected value / drivers on this particular slate that I'm using for an example. So rather than the way these lineups are going to look, these three drivers will essentially appear, or two of the three will appear together in the first 60% of lineups, and then the last 40%, neither of them. What tournament mode does is it spreads that exposure around so that you'll get some lineups with the two of them together, some lineups with just one, some lineups just the other. It's a much better way of optimizing, because you're getting a spread of exposures where, what if one of these two guys kind of shits the bed, but the other one does great? They're both well projected. This being a race, what if one guy crashes, the other one doesn't? Well, I would like to have some lineups with just Algair in it and no Custer in it. That does not happen when you don't use tournament mode. Tournament mode spreads the exposures by using the math to look behind and say, all right, is Algair in, as these guys are appearing in different lineups. It's actually ideal to also not use a single max exposure number, because we want to spread out. So I might go 55, I might go 65. I don't use global max ever. I think people who do that are just lazy. You have to set exposure max exposure limits per player on a per player basis based on how much you're comfortable with them. So like this guy in this slate was 55% projected, whereas this guy was 29% and this guy was 50%. So if I wanted to use those numbers and just be where the market was supposed to be, I might set these like this, using the projected ownership as my guideline. I don't think that's the only way it should go, but I'm just saying it's better. And when you're doing that now, you know, here are the lineups being made. Again, these two 100% together, but watch what happens. They're not used at all in the last number of lineups generated. Now I go to tournament mode and you'll see it look completely different. See, now they're still 50-50. They're hanging around their total exposure allowance for the whole time. They're not going over and then just being cut. So they're not showing up together in every single initial lineup and then nothing for the last, but rather it's being spread out perfectly. So there is your new awesome feature. You need to check this off when you're using it. Prioritize completing lineups above max exposure settings. It's specific to tournament mode. Let us know if you notice anything strange, weird, unusual. Anytime we launch something new, there is that possibility of a bug. We want to get to those as quickly as possible. I found something yesterday in testing that we cleaned up, but you never know until it's in full force if other little things pop up in weird situations. So let us know. Enjoy this new feature. We have more stuff coming in the next week or so that's going to be awesome as well. So many plans, not even going to talk about it, just going to hit you with them as they come up. Thanks, guys.